Last time we did round one of a one quarterback and a super flex. You can't miss out on round two. Here who we are going to take in round two for both formats. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. And we're back with round two of our mock drafts for both formats. Hopefully you guys liked round one, but you know, we're checking the comments. Make sure you're leaving them. We have not seen them yet. Spoiler alert, we're recording this a little bit earlier, but we're going to be reading all the comments. Make sure you guys are leaving them down there and leaving us feedback. But that said, you can follow us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, and at FF After Dark for the podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, and podcasts are really found. And if you're not watching on YouTube or Rumble, I implore you guys to go over there and watch the video because you'll see the draft boards as we're going through here. But on Monday, we went through, or Tuesday, we went through all of the round one for one quarterback and for Superflex. So again, hopefully it wasn't too confusing, but today we're going to be going through round two. And again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible to follow along, but we're looking for you guys for feedback. But recapping for you guys who missed it, if you did miss it, go watch that video. I'm telling you, there's some good conversations I felt like on why we would take certain guys over others, especially towards the back half of the round because the top picks are kind of consensus at this point in time. But in the Superflex, Caleb Williams went 101, Marvin Harrison 102, Jaden Daniels, quarterback 103, Drake May at 104, Malik Neighbors 105, Brock Bowers at 6, Rome Odunze at 7. Massive string of wide receivers to fill out the back half of the Superflex here. Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr. at 8, Roman Wilson at 9, Troy Franklin at 10, Xavier Worthy at 11, and Ladd McConkey at 12. And then going over to the one quarterback league was much different. Marvin Harrison 101, Malik Neighbors 102, Rome Odunze at 3, Brock Bowers at 4. Not too much different there. Caleb Williams at 5. I think this is kind of your consensus top 5 in a one quarterback. And then after that, it's just pandemonium. Brian Thomas at 6, Troy Franklin at 7, Braylon Allen at 8, Drake May at 9, Roman Wilson at 10, Bucky Irvin, running back, another one, made it in the first round here at 11, and Trey Benson at 12. Now, we're going to be alternating picks here, and Dale is going to be doing the 2-1 in the one quarterbacks. I'm going to be doing the 2-1, starting with the 2-1 in the Superflex, then we'll alternate back and forth. That said, all that kind of said, how we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I feel like I had a pretty good round one in each one of my drafts. Like I got Marvin Harrison.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I love to see it. Like I got Drake May a couple places. So I'm feeling great, man.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you whatsoever. It's a good draft class. That's just kind of how it goes. They're up and down, and this is just a very, very good draft class. And all the people, I remember 6 months ago, people were saying, "Oh, this is a terrible wide receiver draft class. It's terrible. Now look at it, dude. Like there's so many wide receivers. There's literally anything you could want at wide receiver in this draft class, and it's crazy. Every year it feels like it's just another wide receiver draft class. It's nuts how they're creating these guys in labs at this point. I swear.
I agree. Like it's quite disgusting, but it's really good for the league.
And hilarious that some teams have no wide, like the Giants have no wide receivers.
I know.
Like,
I don't.
How is that possible?
I think it's interesting how like teams draft philosophies and how they are picking players and how they're getting. Yeah, it's different. I won't say it's bad. It's different. It's different.
So, dude, come on. You don't have a single wide receiver after 4 years. Like they haven't had one since they got rid of OBJ.
I mean, they have Darius Slayton and they have Sterling Shepard, who's torn his ACL 3 or 4 different times. Come on.
He's gonna be just rolling around there in a wheelchair sooner or later.
He probably will be here soon, unfortunately.
Poor Sterling. But all right, that said, let's jump into this. And I really want the 2-1, you son of a gun. Who are you taking 2-1 in the one quarterback? Let's hear
All
your
right,
choices
yeah,
here.
yeah. 2-1. We've taken some running backs already. I don't. I mean, I could think about Jonathan Brooks, but I think I want to go. I really like drafting wide receivers in rookie drafts. I feel there's a lot more
Mm-hmm.
value in wide receivers than there are running backs. In your rookie drafts because of the resale value. In my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another little tip that I have is like I would much rather trade my rookie picks for a stud running back than I would draft a rookie running back.
Yeah, it's a
Just
little safer, it feels like.
yeah, it does feel safer to me because there's not that many studs at running back.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
so
And that kind of
yeah,
goes into another little piece of context, right? Or like another tip for you guys out there. And I'm finding this a lot. And I talked about this on Tuesday's episode, but I just did a trade that I have the 1-8 in multiple leagues. The 1-7 and the 1-8. The 1-8 in Superflex does not feel great. Like, I like Brian Thomas, but there is a chance that Brian Thomas is not as good as we think he could be, right? I've been throwing the 1-8 at people for DK Metcalf, for Chris
for
Olave,
months,
for
he tells you.
DJ Moore, right? And I finally got one trade done today, DK Metcalf for the 1-8. The guy came to me for that one,
Love it.
which was a complete shock, which felt
I
great.
I love that actually.
I woke up with that trade offer and I was like, thank you. I will accept this right
Yeah.
away. But it just doesn't feel great to have those picks because there's a chance. Again, Brian Thomas could be a stud. He could be amazing. Braylon Allen in a one quarterback could be amazing. I really like this player. But there's a very good chance that he busts out and he's not good at all. Troy
Yeah.
Franklin, Roman Wilson, Bucky Irvin, all these guys in the back half of a one quarterback. You've got the Superflex, you've got the same guys, Xavier Worthy or Lad McConkey. It's just even Roma Dunze. Like, none of these guys are locked and loaded studs. The only two that I'm absolutely confident are going to be amazing at the next level are Neighbors and Harrison, right? Other than that, there's nobody that I'm dead set confident at
Right.
wide receiver.
I
So
I agree. Yep.
if you can trade your pick, and it's not like DK Metcalf is old, guys. He's like 26. Like
I know.
okay, I'll happily take that. A guaranteed guy versus a potential upside. Lock me in for that guaranteed guy. So just another piece of advice there. Now, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your pick here. Who you taking?
Hey, it's all good. And I'm going to I'm going to start off the second round with how I finished the first round
Lad.
in the Superfest in Superflex with my little lad McConkey.
You son of a gun. I don't
I
blame
know.
you.
I'm just going to double up on lad.
No, I don't blame you. He's a good player. If you want to hear
Yes.
more of Dale's thoughts on Lad McConkey, go check out last times because he talks about him a little bit more there, but potentially a very, very good player. In my opinion, is a little bit more quarterback dependent, but or scheme dependent, depending on where he goes. But I think this guy could be a day 2 pick for sure. I don't think he's a first rounder, but I think he could be a solid.
I think he's going to be a late day 2, like a round 3 guy.
Yeah, I think so as well. Early round 3, I think could be very, very likely for Lad McConkey here. All right, now I'm going to stick with the one quarterback. I'm going to take my player at 2-2 here, and that's going to be the quarterback, Jaden Daniels. And I get it. It's a one quarterback. What are you taking a quarterback for? If you listen to my breakdown on why I wasn't the biggest fan of Dale taking Drake May, in a one quarterback, I have to take a guy that I believe is a difference maker. Jaden Daniels at 2-2 has that potential to be a massive difference maker, again, with the rushing upside, where, you look at the other guys on the board, and unless you have, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, one of these top guys, it never hurts to get another potential dual threat quarterback on your roster.
Agreed.
And Jaden Daniels, if he hits like we think he might be able to hit, who would you rather have in a year's time, Jalen Daniels or Devontae Walker, right? So the value is just too high for the upside.
Yes, and that's very, very true. I feel there's probably weeks this year in a one quarterback that you're going to start Jaden Daniels on a pretty good team.
Right. Sure.
So
For sure. All right, going over the Superflex League here, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Again, I think I'm trying not to just double up my picks because it's kind of
you might as
boring to
well,
do
Calvin.
that. But
Come on, man.
2-1 for Braylon Allen just feels too.
I knew you were going to
man.
take Braylon Allen because I've already penciled in my 202, so don't worry.
There you go. Now where is he? Sleeper ADP is not the best right now.
No, it's not.
Yeah, Braylon Allen. Again, this guy, dude, he's built like a truck. He's Derrick Henry too. He is the next Derrick Henry. I know everyone thought AJ Dillon would be the next Derrick Henry, but dude, this guy is built, man. He's a thick boy and he's young. He's only 20 years old.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with that. Like his breakout age was what, 17.
No, it's crazy.
It felt like
it
so,
actually was.
I
It was 17.
it was. I know it was. So I really do. I do like Braylon Allen as well. I think my worry is that I feel he's very scheme dependent. Compared
Yeah.
to some of the other players.
He needs a good
I
offensive
felt
line, I think, for sure.
Yes, and I felt he was schemed out of a lot of opportunities last year at Wisconsin. Unfortunately, with Luke Fickell being there, so I think there could be really good days, but I think there could be days where like he played Ohio State last year. Like I think he played a half against them and barely had any yards. It was pretty magical in my end personally, but still.
I definitely hear that, but potential upside here is just too great for me to pass up. That leaves you open to take quite a few different wide receivers here. Who are you looking at? And again, I think we'll probably talk about this player, so I'm going to save this little mini rant for when he does get drafted by one of us. But man, there's a player here that is going insanely high compared to what people are just. They're just so enamored with the potential, and they're ignoring a lot of
red flags.
But we'll talk about that once we get to it. So who are you taking here at 2-2?
I talked about this guy last time. It is not a wide receiver. It's a running back, and Bucky Irvin.
Okay.
I honestly feel he's going to end up probably being my running back one. In my opinion, I really like what he did at Oregon. I know he did a lot of screens and, like he had a lot of big runs against a lot of bad defenses, but I don't care. Like this dude has breakaway speed. He has soft hands for a running back, and, I think this dude's it.
Fair enough. All right, jumping over to the one quarterback. Who are you taking at 2-3 here? And this is where we're getting into a little bit new territory. Again, all the guys we talked about so far, we talked about on last episode, so you can hear a little bit more of our thoughts on these guys if you go check that one out. But we wanted to not completely disregard what their potential value is, but I think here we're kind of in new territory where these guys haven't been drafted yet. So who are you looking at 2-3?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I've been fortunate to do a couple mock drafts with some other people in the community, and some different people that have different insights than I do. So I think I'm going to go with Adonai Mitchell from Texas.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, is where I'm going. I think well, he was a counterpart to Xavier Worthy.
Mm-hmm. Taking him over Worthy is interesting.
Yes, I'm gonna take him over Worthy. In this format, I really like Worthy. I think my biggest thing is his build.
It's small.
It is very small, and like Calvin's compared him to like Devonta Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think he's a lesser Devonta Smith, which still isn't bad. And it could be really good, but like I really think Adonai Mitchell could really be like he could be the alpha in that situation.
For sure. And let me just ask you a question though on these two. So obviously Xavier Worthy is very thin, but so is Zay Flowers, right? And Zay Flowers came into the combine. He worked with that one group that prepares all these guys for the combine, right? So these prospects, man, it's always funny to me, like these prospects and these pro players, like the first thing, if I got signed in the first round, the first thing I'm doing is hiring a professional, like a personal coach, trainer, and a professional chef. Like number one and number two things,
Right.
I'm taking my money and hiring those two things just to, like, especially for quarterbacks. So many of these guys struggle with footwork and stuff, and it's like just go practice, guys. Like just train that stuff. You know what I mean? But the guys that do, like Zay Flowers last year with this offsite group, you know, he was small in college. He was around 170. He weighed in to the combine at 185. He beefed up 15 pounds of muscle in about 4 months with these guys. So, you know, they obviously know what they're doing for it. So the question is, if Xavier Worthy beefs up, you know, he's about 165 is what they estimate him at right now at Texas. If he were to weigh in to the combine at 180, 182, would that change your opinion on him versus Mitchell?
It probably would a little bit, you know. I mean, I think in this exercise, you know, I do. I mean, I don't always like taking repeat players,
Right.
you know, and so I think for this exercise, I kind of wanted to see. I kind of want to take a Donnie Mitchell, you
Sure.
know, and I feel he has good value right there and good potential. Where I feel I really like Xavier Worthy's profile and what he did at Texas, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, with him having a more diminished role because of, you know, Adonai Mitchell and Jatavian Sanders
Mm-hmm.
and these other guys that we're going to talk about here probably later today. You know, I'm a little worried about that. I'm just worried that he is now the small fish in the big pond compared to him, you know, a
Fair
couple
enough.
years ago at Texas. You know, he was the big fish in the small pond.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, like I said, I just want to see if that changes anything because I do get the small build, but if he's smart, man, he's going to be beefing up for sure. So,
Yeah,
all
agreed.
right, at 2-4 in the one quarterback, this is where it gets tough because the running backs are actually going off the board quite a bit. Blake Corum is still here. Xavier Worthy, I think at this point I kind of have to take Xavier Worthy. I think the
Yep.
value on him is just so much higher. I took him in the other one. I'm trying to avoid doubling up just like you, but I would rather have the upside on Xavier Worthy than Blake
Yeah.
Corum. Now, this could change if Blake Corum goes to like the Chargers in round 2 or something like that. But
Yeah.
for now, landing spot unknown, just give me Xavier Worthy and the potential upside there. Now, jumping back over to the Superflex, and we'll kind of rattle off these a little bit quicker here as we're going along. 2-3, there's a lot of guys still on the board. And again, it's just, I don't like doubling up, but the value on these guys is just, it's crazy to me. Now, the question now becomes Trey Benson, running back, or a quarterback here, because this is super flex. And I was looking at it, we didn't
Yeah.
have JJ McCarthy is getting a lot of buzz. He's probably going to be a first round pick. He's kind of defaulting to most people's quarterback 4 in this class or higher. I still like Bo Nix a little bit more than JJ McCarthy, but at this point, I think the value is there on JJ McCarthy that because of his youth, I don't like JJ McCarthy that much, but he's in the same bucket as Bo Nix for me. I will take JJ McCarthy over Bo Nix just because of the youth factor, where if this guy comes in, he's probably going to go somewhere where he's going to be able to sit for a year, and you know
Potentially,
his
yeah.
value is just gonna build over that year. Oh, JJ McCarthy's going to all the meetings. Oh, you know, all this talk you're gonna hear over the next year. I'm just gonna sit on it, and then if he sucks, then okay, fine, whatever. Maybe I'll just cash out immediately. But if not, his value could definitely go even higher. So it just seems like a worthwhile lottery ticket there compared to Bo Nix, who I'm not convinced he's going to be a first round pick at this point in time. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely do hear the argument. You know, I think it feels like right now that JJ McCarthy has a better chance of starting
right.
week 1 compared to Bo Nix. You know, and you know I understand all the reasons why. So you know, I think it's gonna be interesting to see where he falls.
For sure. All right, who's your 2-4 here in
Um,
Superflex?
I thought about a wide receiver, you know, again, but I'm
You're
not
bored
really.
taking them all.
I know. I'm trying. I told you I really like wide receivers.
I know they're really good this year.
And there's none I really like. I have a couple that I like, but I don't like super love at 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm toying between either Jonathan Brooks or Blake Corum.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I think about Jonathan Brooks, the more I don't like him.
Yep.
In that, I think especially him coming off the ACL injury,
He's the one that
and
I was saving my mini rant for. So if
yeah.
you want to take him
Hey,
and kick this off,
hey,
go ahead.
yeah, I'm taking Blake Corum here,
All right.
and
I
I
don't. Yeah,
feel
I get it.
yeah, I feel of the two, he is the safer and better choice.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with Brooks is, I know for me is the injury.
Mm-hmm.
In the injury history is big. Like Blake Corum hasn't had that. I watched a lot of Blake Corum tape, and I feel tremendously better than I do with Corum than Brooks.
Fair enough. And yeah, we'll talk about it here soon enough. But yeah, it's just I don't think he's going to make it out of this round without getting drafted in probably the one quarterback. But I have thoughts on Jonathan Brooks, so we'll save him till he actually gets drafted by one of us. And if not, I'll save it to the end of the video. But
Right.
all right, 2-5 in the one quarterback. So really quickly recapping the first four picks in both. In the one quarterback, we had Lad McConkey, Jaden Daniels, Adonai Mitchell, and Xavier Worthy go off the board. In the Superflex, Braylon Allen, Bucky Irvin, JJ McCarthy, and Blake Corum. We're kind of catching up here on the Superflex to all the guys that were not quarterbacks drafted in the
Yeah.
one quarterback, right? So it's kind of how it goes, and it lags a little bit there. So
Yeah.
2-5 in the one quarterback. Who you looking at?
Um, I really hate to double up, but like I really think Blake Corum at this point is
Yeah,
a sensational value.
again, yeah, I
Um,
don't blame you whatsoever. At 2-5, that is pretty good.
yeah, yes, it
Pretty
is.
good.
And I feel really good with him there. So I think that's honestly that's where he's gonna go. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's some people's running back one. And he goes more towards a Braylon Allen range. At the end of the first round. So with him being at 205 here, that's perfect.
Yep, I get it 100%. And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting for me because, you took the guy that I was going to 100% snatch up if it was me.
You're welcome.
But
You're welcome.
leaves me not a terrible choice here because I do get to get my player. I like Jalen Polk a lot. I
I
think
like
that
it.
Jalen Polk is a little bit better than the other guys on the board here. There's one other guy, but you'll probably end up taking him, but that's all right. But Jalen Polk, he got overshadowed by Roma Dunze a little bit, and I do
Good.
think that this guy's going to be very good. There's a few more red flags on him or not even red flags, but just concerning pieces or unknowns that we don't know with Jalen Polk compared to some of these other guys, right? And it's just, yeah, the value is pretty good at 2.6. You're not really investing too much in him, but I think again, this guy's going to be probably a day 2 or a round 4 pick, and I'm more than in at that cost. So at
Agreed.
2.6, Jalen Polk. Now jumping back over to the Superflex, this is where it gets interesting. Again, I don't like doubling up either, but the value is just way too hard to pass up here. Trey Benson at 2.5 is just
Hmm.
it's so good, man. Like I wanted him at 112 in the one quarterback. It's just he's such a good player. He's the
Yeah.
prototypical running back. Braylon Allen is a super freak where he's 240 pounds and super young, right? Trey Benson is your traditional like 220 pounds, 6 foot tall. Like he's the do it all type of back. And I think that he is going to be someone that is going to be very interesting to watch where he ends up going. And, at 2.6 or 2.5, it's just in a super flex. Yeah. Again, sign me up all day.
Yeah, no, I do like that. And okay, so I'm at 206 in the super flex. I could go with Jalen Polk, and a kind of double what you did at the 206. I also could go quarterback here.
Hmm.
but I feel for it's for the one quarterback. I think that's it's for it's for the Superflex. Like that's not a bad spot for Bo Nix.
No,
I
it's
mean
not.
that's who I take. Um, but I think if you're kind of at that range, that like you kind of want a like more of a difference maker, anyways.
Mm,
And I don't think Bo Nix. I kind of feel Bo Nix might get like a little. I don't want to say the Hendon Hooker treatment this year, but like a guy that kind of sits
sure.
and isn't really doing a whole lot. So I would prefer to have a guy that is going to produce for me. So
Fair enough.
um, I think with that, instead, I'm going to go with Jermaine Burton. I
I
like
knew you were
Jermaine
gonna take
Burton.
him over. I knew it.
So I watched him a little bit with some Alabama games. I'm
Hmm.
not a big Bama fan by any means, but I do like I do love me some college football, and he made their quarterback look great.
Yeah.
There was a couple plays where there was these 50-50 balls, and he just snagged them out of the sky, and really won his team the games. It's compared to the lackluster quarterback play that they had this year. So, I think Jermaine Burton is going to be a riser. At the combine. I feel I think I feel a little bit better than about his ability to take the next step than I do Jalen Polk. I feel he's a more physical guy than Polk is.
Yeah. No, definitely. He's different he's definitely a different style of receiver than Polk. So,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I knew you liked him, so I knew you were gonna take him. But not a problem. Not a problem. All right, let's jump
Yeah.
back over to the
So,
one quarterback, 2-7. Who you looking at here?
I'm not gonna double up. I don't think that's fair to keep doing that all the time. So, um,
I don't care. Do what you
I
want.
know, I know that. I know that. But I think I'm gonna go with a guy that we saw in the ACC play that really brought up his team quite a bit,
Hmm.
and made Clemson a little bit watchable.
Okay.
Um, and I'm gonna go with Will Shipley.
Interesting. Will
Yep.
Shipley is very interesting in this draft class. We talked about it on the breakdown of these players, but Will Shipley, he's the pass catcher of this draft class. Like
Yes,
this
yes,
dude
he
is
is.
just PPR
Yes.
machine. So
Yes, yes. And I feel in the right place. He could be, like he could be the next Austin Eckler in a way.
yeah, for sure. Like he's
He
smaller.
really
He's
could.
definitely smaller.
Yeah.
I don't love
Yeah.
his running.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the only thing that concerns me is he going to get a limited play time because he is smaller. He can't really pass block as
I
much, but
I
maybe
I right. I mean, unfortunately, I think running backs are, a running back by committee, in most teams anymore. So,
right.
I think he's going to be on some pass downs. Like they might have him in the slot. Like, I think if he goes to a creative offensive mind, that they can use Will Shipley interchangeably.
Fair enough. And that leaves me on the clock here at 2-8. This one, again, it's Jermaine Burton is the one that I want to take. You already took him, but so I'm going to take someone else that has a little bit of upside. I'm going to take Keon Coleman. Um, Keon Coleman is just, again, at the back half of the second, I am more than fine taking lottery tickets on upside players. Keon Coleman, he's not the smoothest player to watch. He's kind of clunky, and that could be just something that he can work on and iron out in his game. But it could also be something that stops him from being a pro for very long.
Yep.
Like I have no idea how he's gonna go. Um, if you told me he was going to be an all pro, okay, I can see the path for it. And if you also told me he's going to bust out of the league in 2 years, I can also see it. So he's an interesting player, but he does have a lot of the measurables and the upside that you want to see in an alpha dog wide receiver. So I am willing to take a lottery ticket on Keon Coleman at this point in the draft.
Yeah. I definitely see that. I mean, I don't like putting players on a do not draft list because I feel that's silly.
Right.
But I think he's on my be aware list.
Right.
I'm not really in love with him. I think I mean, I don't think he's going to test very well. I think there's going to be I feel there's a lot of red flags with him, and I think there's other players I like better that I would much rather have than Coleman.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And now jumping back over to the Superflex 2-7. This one's a pretty easy one for me at this point. You kind of talked about him a little bit with your last pick, but Bo Nix for me, it just I was in contemplation between him and JJ McCarthy. Bo Nix, he does have the potential to be a first round pick, and if he ends up being a first rounder, I would not be shocked. And I do think that there are tools in his game that can work at the next level. And I think that Bo Nix is the one guy that's getting a little bit too much hate right now. Like people are kind of crapping on his game a little bit unfairly, in my opinion. And Bo Nix does have what it takes to succeed at the next level. It took him a little while. He's old as dirt, but doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player. And for fantasy at 2-7 in a super flex, that's a lottery ticket. Again, in the back half of the second, most of these guys are not going to be good anyway, right? We've kind of established that over the last couple of years that second round picks are lottery tickets, and they're not great ones at that, right? Where it's like 10% hit rate on average. So if I'm taking a lottery ticket, I'm going to take one at quarterback, where in a super flex it's just so valuable if those guys do hit. So give me Bo Nix here at 2-7.
No, I love that. I was going to take him at 2-8 if you didn't take him. I was about ready to hand in my pick, and I'm a little sad. So at two, yeah, I know. So at 208, I'm not really in love with any of these wide receivers left. Personally,
except to Donnie, but you don't want to double up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could.
You can take it. I mean, the value on a Donnie here is just too good.
Yeah, it is very good, but I'm a little worried that you're going to take a guy that I want later, and I think I'm going to go with his Texas teammate, Ja'Tavion Sanders.
All right, fair enough. He's someone that's interesting. I probably wouldn't take him in a super flex in round 2 unless it's tight end premium, and only because of the players that are left on the board. Again, like Keon Coleman, Donnie Mitchell, Leggett, Polk, these other guys, like even Jonathan Brooks. I'm not the biggest fan of him. Like Jonathan Brooks is fine. Don't get me wrong. He's like my running back 3 to 4 in this class. Like he's kind of halfway between those two. But people are just going nuts on this guy, and it's just, we'll see if we get I break him down. But
right.
No, Ja'Tavion Sanders is not a bad pick. I think this guy definitely has some flash to him, but in a super flex, that's where it gets a little bit tougher.
And going back to what you said about Keon Coleman,
right?
Is that like these picks don't always hit, and I kind of feel like this is around where like Sam Laporta went last year,
right?
For instance, I'm not saying Sanders is near Sam Laporta. I'm not saying that at all, but
you never know, right? That's kind of the whole point.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe in the talent in Sanders and think he can be a guy there, but I think if you're kind of taking stabs at people, I feel, at least to me, of the guys there, like he's a pretty good stab.
Fair enough. All right, 2-9 for you, sir. And
yes,
the one quarterback.
I'm just gonna double up what I did in Superflex and go with Jermaine Burton. Just go ahead and.
Oh, you son of a gun! That was gonna be my pick.
Yep. I had already penciled it in after you took Keon Coleman. It was about the easiest pick I could make today. So I'm gonna go with Jermaine Burton. I've already talked about him. I like the guy. I like him more than some of these wide receivers that have gone before him. And have at it.
Yep. And this is where it gets interesting for a one quarterback, right? This is, I think, right here. This pick is where, and maybe this is where, I'll bite the bullet and I'll take Jonathan Brooks here. And
I like it.
Jonathan Brooks this pick right after this feels like the drop off point. And there's still 2 guys, Walker and Leggett, that could be really good. There's other guys that are there's talk about them. Jamari Thrash, you've got Brendan Rice, you've got Jalen McMillan, and we'll see who ultimately gets drafted in this mock draft. But Even Malachi Corley. There's a lot of guys that are being talked about here, but it feels like after these guys is where the red flags start to outweigh the potential a little bit more. Not saying that these guys won't hit potentially, but it's just where it gets a little risky. And I kind of put Jonathan Brooks, and this is where I'll give a little bit of a rant on this now. So Jonathan Brooks, he's a very good player, but he tore his ACL. He's not going to be ready for the combine. And if this is what the disconnect is that annoys me so much, and maybe this is just my engineering brain working, but it just annoys me when people are blatantly hypocritical on stuff where running backs don't matter, teams don't need running backs, blah, blah, blah. They're all replaceable. Right. Why the hell would any NFL team draft him on a day 2? Like, for what reason would he be a day 2 pick? What reason would he He had one good year after sitting behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. And that's not his fault. He drew the short straw where he had to sit behind Bijan Robinson, who is like the generational prospect of generational prospects at running back. This dude's a stud, right? It's not Jonathan Brooks' fault. But he comes out in his first year, does amazing. He's a really freaking good player. Tears his ACL, is going to miss a ton of time, is going to miss training camp. He's not going to be ready until like basically the start of the year, where you're going to tell me that some team is going to invest a day 2 pick, a second rounder or a third rounder on a guy that you can get the same production from any of the other guys we've drafted ahead of him so far. Why would they do that, guys? That makes no sense. So if he's going to be a day 4 pick or a day 3 pick, or like a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder, well, all of a sudden, now your analytics says that he's going to be a bust. He's never going to be good because he was not a day 2 pick. So it's like people are being blatantly disingenuous with Jonathan Brooks. He's a good player. Is he going to be good enough to break your models that your analytics say he's going to be a bust? Because he's not going to be a day 2 pick. You tell me. Because I'm not the one that makes these rules. You make these rules. So Jonathan Brooks, good player, probably a day 3 pick, can buck the trend because when he gets healthy, he is going to be someone to watch for sure. But he's going to be a day 3 pick, which means the odds are very stacked against him that he's not going to make it in the NFL. That's my rant. Thoughts?
I agree. I think you said it very well. And I think there is a path, and I think he is a good running back, but he's got to miss a lot of time, and the longevity of running backs is very slim to begin with.
Yep.
So it's a likelihood of him making it are a little bit more slim. I think it's going to be really important where his draft capital is,
for sure.
Because if it is a day 2 pick, I would feel a lot differently about him, but it's trending the opposite way.
I agree. And if he does end up being a day 2 pick, I will make a video admitting that I'm wrong. But I just don't see any.
I can't wait for that to drop, Calvin.
Yeah. I just don't see any world where he's a day 2 pick. Like, I really don't. This is one of the best free agency running back classes in a long time. There are so many good running backs out there on the market. And then you've got a mediocre running back class where there's going to be no first rounders. So, like, there's too many good players to take above Jonathan Brooks in this draft class. There's just too many guys. It sucks, and he's a good player, but if it wasn't for the ACL, this guy would be in a completely different conversation for sure. So,
yeah.
All right. Enough ranting. Going back to the 2-9 in the Superflex, and we'll recap this here shortly. I'm going to be taking this one. It's pretty easy for me. It's going to be someone that we've already talked about, Donnie Mitchell, and the value is just too good on him. Jalen Polk's there as well, and it's kind of a coin flip. I took Polk already, so I'll just take Mitchell on this one and kind of leave you the opportunity to draft Polk if you want.
Yeah, at 210, I'm not going to draft Polk. I'm going to go with Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky.
Okay, Corley.
Yeah, he is a yak star, as I would like to now officially coin that. I think the biggest knock against this guy is the competition that he played, but he was playing like a man amongst boys, against I'm trying to remember what division Western Kentucky's in. I feel like it was the American Conference, probably not. But anyways, no, it's like the Sun Belt or something like that. It doesn't matter. It was not a Power Five conference, I'll tell
Right.
you that. So something that I really like to see is something that we talked about before is guys on Bruce Feldman's freak list.
Yep.
This guy made it.
Yep.
Like I think that's really important is to have these physical freak athletes, on your squad. So, it's the biggest. I feel the biggest knock with Corley, is his size a little bit,
Hmm.
in his stature, but unfortunately at Western Kentucky, like he had a pretty limited route tree, but for what he had and what he did really well.
Fair enough.
So you know, I think it's gonna be interesting where his role is gonna be because is he gonna be this outside guy or is he gonna be a slot guy?
His draft capital is going to be
He
so
yeah,
interesting.
it's gonna be really interesting. He's 5'10", 215. Like I
He's
feel to
a
me
he's a Debo
he's a
type.
slot.
He's like
Yeah,
a Debo.
yeah, he
Debo is the
can be.
best comp for him because Debo's a yak god too, right? So,
Yeah,
what'd you call him? A yak what?
a yak star,
Yak star. Yeah, yeah.
a
That's
yak
what
star.
Debo is
So
too, man.
yeah,
Like, very good comp. Debo's a little bit smaller. I think Debo's like 6 foot, but he's like 220. He's a thick boy. So, no, I like that a lot. Going back to the one quarterback, 211. Let's get your last pick in here. Let's round this baby out.
I'm doubling up with Corley.
Doubling up with Corley. All right, fair enough.
Yep, yep. I'm gonna make it easy.
All right, and then yeah, I'll just set the last pick in the one quarterback to Jatavian Sanders, who you talked about. Again, it makes it a lot more
I like it.
palatable in a one quarterback league where I'm taking a Jatavian because you just run out of players. And
Yeah.
again, the third round in this draft class, like third round picks could be very fun this year where you're getting a Johnny Wilson, Jalen McMillan, Xavier Leggett, Devontae Walker, like any of these guys in the third round, Audric Estime, really really loaded third round. I think that there's a lot of depth in terms of that before there's just a complete drop off where I just don't even care about these players anymore. But it does feel a little bit thin right now in terms of potential, in my opinion. So wrapping up the one quarterback. So at 2-1 we had Ladd McConkey, Jaden Daniels at 2-2, Adonai Mitchell at 2-3, Xavier Worthy at 4, Blake Corum at 2-5, Jalen Polk at 2-6, Will Shipley at 2-7, Keon Coleman at 2-8, what is it? Oh, I'm blanking. Burton.
Jermaine Burton.
Jermaine Burton. Yes, thank you. At 2-9, Jonathan Brooks at 2-10, Malachi Corley at 2-11, and Jatavian Sanders at 2-12. So very good overall one quarterback. I'll jump over to the Superflex and we can wrap this one up as well. With the 2-11, with the guys that are left on the board, I'm just going to, at this point, probably, I can't pass up my boy Jalen Polk here. Again, I like the potential difference maker. And it makes sense, right? We're catching up on the skill players in the Superflex where there's so many quarterbacks that kind of, in the one quarterback you saw, we only had 3 quarterbacks go. We've got 5 over here. It just makes sense that there's going to be a lot more guys available at the back half of the second round, which means that, everything I just said about the third round in a one quarterback is doubly true for the Superflex. Third rounders might be very, very useful this upcoming year in a Superflex. So get those thrown into those trade deals, guys, and it could be very, very nice for you. All right, who's your last pick here at 212? Round this thing out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Polk's teammate at Washington and Jalen McMillan.
Okay, Jalen McMillan. Let's
So
hear a little breakdown on him.
so kind of like Corley was like like he is your yak star. Like that's what his shtick is. I mean he has pretty good hands, but sometimes he has what they like to call like focus drops where like he might hear footsteps, stuff like that. Just it's just some of the nuances that he just needs to pick up on a little bit better. So
Sure.
he's a pretty polished route runner, which is big in the NFL. Like that really helps your learning curve quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the big thing with him is that he is a little thinner, and plus he was injured quite a bit this last year. So that's something just to be aware of. So like he was limited, unfortunately, um, in injuries, and only played 9 games last year. So you know, I just think that's something to watch out with. But like I think he could be somebody that could be a difference maker. And a lot of these guys aren't going to be your Justin Jeffersons that you find like towards the end of the first round. Like these guys are just going to be dart throws.
Yeah, true.
So
True.
like with him and his potential, like I think that could be really big. And I feel he could do something with what he's got. So
Fair enough. And yeah, again, there's so many players left on the board here in a Superflex at this point. Like 3 up to 3-7. Like Michael Penix is still on the board.
Yep.
Jamari Thrash. Like there's a lot of guys. If Michael Penix ends up being a first round pick, this completely changes. But I don't see that at this point in time. But there's just, it's a good class. It is a very, very good class. I think there's plenty of depth in this one. Ianias Smith is another guy that I've been hearing a lot about lately. Yeah, there's so many guys that you can take some stabs at. So get those third rounders in your Superflex leagues and prosper for sure. Now, recapping the round 2 of the Superflex, we started with Braylon Allen at 2-1, Bucky Irvin at 2-2, JJ McCarthy at 2-3, Blake Corum at 2-4, Trey Benson at 2-5, Burton, I forgot it again.
Jermaine Burton.
Jermaine Burton. It's a mental block now. Jermaine Burton at 2-6, Bo Nix at 2-7, Jatavion Sanders at 2-8, Adonai Mitchell at 2-9, Malachi Corley at 10, Jalen Polk at 11, and Jalen McMillan at 2-12. So again, let us know your thoughts over on Twitter, on YouTube. If you can, just leave your thoughts on this format. If you like this double mock draft where we go through both rounds at the same time for quarterback, or for one quarterback and for Superflex, hopefully you guys were able to follow along easily enough. If not, again, YouTube, we had the draft boards up there so you could kind of follow along visually, but it was fun to talk about this, and you can kind of see a lot of the differences here between a one quarterback and a Superflex, which is very beneficial to go through it at the same time, right? Where you can see these decisions happening in real time, right? Where, in a traditional mock draft episode, right, you're saying, well, this guy might be a second round pick, or this guy might be a third round pick in this format, but we don't really know. Now you can see exactly who we took at these positions. So hopefully you guys like this format. Again, it's something a little bit unique and a little new, and we were just trying it out, but you can let us know your thoughts. Again, if you can, while you're over on YouTube or Rumble or wherever you're listening to this podcast, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out a lot of content over the next couple of weeks. We're going to have rankings coming out soon as well, giving some breakdowns on that. Hopefully we'll get a couple of guests on here to talk about their rankings and debate with us. If you have any specific guests in mind, we're open. We're all ears. Shoot us their names and we can reach out to them as well. So that said, long spiel over. Let us know your thoughts. Follow us on Twitter, TDC_Calvin, Dynasty_Dale, FF After Dark, Dynasty After Dark YouTube channel, Facebook, podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google, everywhere that podcasts are really found. Any last thoughts, Dale?
Send it on home.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us here. Let me know your thoughts on the Jonathan Brooks breakdown, whether I'm crazy or if you guys can see where I'm coming from. But until next time, thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna